I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow. Dominic and Britney are off this weekend, mainly because they didn't see Black Adam. So I called in a reinforcement. You know him as my brother, Raymond.
Hi, everybody.
It's rare that you make an appearance on this podcast. You're like our only listener, so I appreciate that.
1 of 10 views. Let's do it.
The millions.
Oh, you're already starting. You're already starting to make those.
Let's start, because we're going to reminisce about watching WWF Raw and the Attitude Era, because, I mean, this is Black Adam weekend. The number one movie in the country, $67 million. The Rock is finally a superhero.
Oh, the number's already out at 67 million.
That's the estimate. By the time this podcast posts, they'll probably have the final numbers. But as of now, the estimate for the weekend is $67 million, which is not huge, but surprisingly, that's The Rock's biggest box office opening ever.
Yeah, and for a movie about Black Adam, who is not, is not a household name superhero, right? So like 67 million is not bad.
I mean, the biggest comp, I guess, because it's the same source material, Shazam, when that came out like 4 or 5 years ago, was 53 million. So I think Black Adam's a more expensive movie than Shazam was. So there's that. But I mean, I was just surprised because, The Rock is considered probably one of the last living box office draws, actual movie superstars. And $67 million is the biggest opening he's ever had.
I mean, I never saw Jungle Cruise. Was Jungle Cruise good?
I don't think it was a hit. I think it was, it was, there were two kind of like genres of Dwayne Johnson movies. It's the cast Dwayne Johnson to revitalize your tired franchise, right? Like G.I. Joe, Fast and Furious. And then there's put Dwayne Johnson in a brown tinged jungle movie, the Jungle Cruise, the Rampages, the Jumanjis.
Walking Tall.
Walking Tall, but I don't know if that was a jungle, but it was definitely brown color coded.
Definitely brown, yeah. It was definitely here's an action movie that doesn't have any charisma, so let's just insert Dwayne Johnson
Rock
into it.
Yeah, and a yellow filter.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I asked you to come on the pod is that, yes, you and I share a history of back in the day, 20 some odd years ago, watching wrestling together growing up. And then, you actually liked Black Adam. If you were to just take the critical consensus, if you go to Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes and just read all of like the mainstream movie reviewers, this is the worst movie ever made. It's an affront to cinema, but then it's got a 90% audience score. So where are we?
Yeah.
And you texted me before I even saw the movie, like, I liked Black Adam.
Well, and it surprised you because I'm usually the snob between the two of us.
You said it.
Well, look, it's for context for the audience when I listen to this later, that I know that I am the snob and I usually don't like big, dumb superhero movies.
Yeah.
And
you don't like big, smart ones either.
Yeah, that's quote unquote smart ones. I mean, that's the thing is that the critics aren't wrong. I just don't care anymore. Like it's funny because I was thinking about it's like one of the criticisms I was like, oh, there's too much exposition. And you know what? They're not wrong. Like they have to set, because you do have to set up a lot of stuff to get to a place where oh, I can sort of see where this character is coming from. And so that his big emotional turn reveal later is contextualized and makes sense. Or another criticism is oh, it's super derivative and it's things that you've seen before, but done for 90 minutes of punching each other. And it's yeah, all of that is not wrong. I don't care. All of those things, the movie is better than the sum of its parts in that it does all of these things that you've seen before or that aren't the most amazing thing, but it still ends up coming together in a way that I'm chill with, and I think is a good time.
Here's my thing. Name a modern superhero movie, the post MCU era, right? Because that's really where we're living right now.
Right.
The post Dark Knight trilogy, post MCU era of comic book superhero movie. Name one that doesn't fit all of those tropes, right? Because even the
Right.
most critically acclaimed ones, the ones that are beloved by both critics and audiences, have the same fucking tropes. Like they're
Yeah.
still punching each other for 90 minutes. There's still a shit ton of exposition, clunky dialogue.
I think that the movie, and you tell me if this feels right or not, but like, I'm pretty sure that the executives at DC that decided to go with this movie, I think when they were sold it, the elevator pitch was, this is DC's like Black Panther.
You think? I don't think that at all.
I think so. Well, in the sense that it is about like minority people in a fictional country with a magic rock who are going to claim their independence from Western gaze, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I give the movies props for is that it doesn't shy away from that. It doesn't explore it either.
No, it doesn't.
But it doesn't
explore
shy
it
away
either.
from it. Like,
Yeah.
Sarah Shahi gives a great kind of speech to the Justice Society that's like, you never gave a shit about conduct before.
Yeah.
You only give a shit now that we have our own champion.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to frame the marketing has framed the character as an anti-hero. And like, is he an anti-hero because he kills people, or is he an anti-hero because he's not like pro-American?
Yeah.
I don't know which is the worst sin to make him an anti-hero.
Right.
Right?
Because he is a hero. I mean, he is the hero. He's the Kandaki people's champion. Right.
Oh God.
Yeah, this is going to be plenty of Rocky things.
That's all we're done. The
Yeah.
podcast is over. He got the line in that he
Yeah,
wanted.
that's all I wanted to do for this podcast is a whole bunch of Rocky references. And we're not done yet. There's going to be way more.
Oh man.
Laying
Millions and
smack it
millions?
down. It doesn't matter what you think. I'm just getting them all out of the way right now.
Now you're just saying catchphrases. That's not clever, witty insertion.
Yeah, it's not
of
even
a
fan
Rocky
service at this point.
Yeah.
It's just you pull the string on the rock toy and
Yeah.
whatever catchphrase comes out. But at the same time, the Black Panther thing, I mean, I get the kind of analogies. I don't know that it was ever pitched as that, because it was never like, this movie was never kind of marketed as the cultural touchstone that Black Panther was, right?
Sure.
Because like even the fact that it is about this this fictionalized Middle Eastern country, and kind of has elements of like Arab Spring, or even now with the Irani women's protest, like there's that kind of like energy in it. Sarah Shahi in her interviews talks about, because she is of Iranian descent, and talks about how inspired she is by the women's rights movement going on right now. Like it comes up in interviews, but it's not the driving force behind the marketing. The marketing is watch The Rock beat the shit out of people.
Right. Well, I think that's an interesting part to it, is that like the marketing is selling a much dumber movie, and I think that me going into it as it's slightly smarter than the big dumb movie that is being sold.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not brilliant by any means, but it's got a little bit more heart to like everybody's motivations. Everybody's motivations is a little bit more focused than I was expecting.
Yeah, and going back to, again, Sarah Shahi's role, she plays Adriana Tomas. So if anyone's familiar with the Shazam comics, or even the old 70s Shazam TV show, Adriana Tomas is herself eventually going to be a superhero too. A version of the superhero was on Legends of Tomorrow, played by Tala Ash, Zari Tomas. Her superhero identity is Isis, but we'll see if they ever actually have her embody that moniker, because I know in Legends of Tomorrow they shied away from it, which I think is stupid, but that's beside the point. In this movie, she is the audience point of view. She's the regular human caught between these warring gods, and gives the perspective of the Kandaki people, but as well as the audience kind of like entryway into the story. And I think like going in, I didn't realize how big a part she was going to have. She is like, she's not billed as the second lead, but she's basically the second lead of the show, because it's her story. It's her motivations. It's her family that's in peril.
Right. She's the one that drives a lot of the plot forward.
Yeah, which is great. Like I love her as an actress. She's one of my favorite actresses. So the fact that she's embracing her Mina identity, as well as being like the driving force behind the narrative of the story, is great. And to your point, like I wasn't expecting that, because the trailers make it look like the movie is just The Rock punches people for 90 minutes and that's it. And you're right. Like when you actually watch the movie, it really affected me. Like I was going in with low expectations. I had read all the negative reviews thinking, it's gonna be a big dumb movie. Dwayne Johnson movies typically are big dumb movies. And I was actually kind of like impressed by it. Even like Black Adam himself, I think you made the analogy when we were talking about it before, that he kind of comes off as like the T-800, right? He's the he's the Terminator, and the kid Amon is Edward Furlong, teaching him like catchphrases and stuff. So I actually like that dynamic.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and the kid is this product of like, he also feels like the movie has a very like 90s feel, and I think partially because of, or 90s 2000s feel, partially because it's The Rock, but also like it's a young kid who I would say he drives the plot as much as his mother does, and is the audience avatar of like, oh, you know, yes, you can be this big badass, but can you also be kind of funny? Can you be cool?
He's the DC fanboy, right? With like all the posters and toys.
And he like rides around on a skateboard. Like, what? I didn't know that was a thing. Like, what year is this for your like young teen kid to be doing that, right? Yeah, like if I want to stop and like nitpick, there's all sorts of things that I could like find things to complain about, but like I think that's asking for too much from a 2-hour movie that has a lot of characters and a lot of stuff going on. It's an not an adaptation, but it's boiling down a lot of things that are going on, and I never felt too lost in the narrative. You know,
it's interesting you mentioned it's like it feels kind of late 90s, early 2000s. You know, I got the sense that what it reminded me of, and this may seem like a stretch, and I can already hear the groans. I hear your eyes about to roll.
Oh,
but it kind of reminded me of Iron Man.
Oh, that's interesting.
In the sense that it's about you know, people forget 15 years later, Iron Man was not A-list when Iron Man came out. He was B-list at best. But the typical layman in the film-going audience could not tell the difference between Tony Stark and some guy off the street. Tony Stark was not a household name the way Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne is. Iron Man came out, made Iron Man into the phenomenon that he's like. He is now on the echelon with Superman. You could argue he is even more popular than Superman and Batman, which was unheard of 20 years ago. I'm not saying Black Adam is going to be Iron Man, but I do feel like there are memes and jokes about Dwayne Johnson's proclamation that he's about to change the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. But this movie does feel very much like Iron Man in the sense that it kind of uses these obscure superhero characters to lay a foundation for a bigger universe. And I think that like what this movie is kind of like, I find very interesting as someone who's not been the biggest fan of the DCEU thus far, but have liked some aspects of the universe, as disjointed as it is. This is what I appreciate about G.I. Joe Retaliation, another Rock masterpiece. It acknowledged the previous film, as flawed as it is, but set the stage for better films that never came in the G.I. Joe sense, but like a bigger universe that is more closer to what fans were expecting from the universe proper. And I feel like without getting into spoilers yet, because there are some huge spoilers at the end of the movie, which at this point, I don't know if they count as spoilers anymore, because like,
yeah, didn't you already go into them on your like last week's podcast? You already
that's true.
The thing to anyone that stayed on.
That's well, you as the only listener of the podcast, you may be the only one who realizes the continuity of Hard Knock Life. We have already discussed these spoilers, but you know, this thumbnail is going to have Black Adam on it. They're going to know this is the Black Adam podcast. Not everyone listens to the entire episode, so anyway. Without getting into that spoiler, I feel like this kind of is able to acknowledge, yes, there is a DC universe prior, but we're setting the stage for future movies to come. And that's kind of how it's been marketed too. And I got that sense watching the movie. Again, I can feel the eye rolls out there in podcast world as I say that, but that's what I was reminded of as I was watching the movie. More so than Green Lantern, because I think Green Lantern was DC's first attempt to replicate the Iron Man formula.
Yeah, I guess my only like pushback to that is I think that the charisma of Robert Downey Jr. is a different kind of charisma from The Rock, and like where these are coming in the creation of franchises is a little bit different.
Yeah,
that like I for me it's not quite a 1-to-1 there, just because like part of me, another reason that it has that 90s 2000 feel is that Iron Man is a talky movie. It like has a lot of dialogue, but like I don't think that, or at least to me, catchphrases don't like stick. Like there is a meta joke in Black Adam of trying to have a catchphrase, which makes it feel more like he's trying to find his hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah,
right? And
well, right, which will make the Terminator analogies more apt.
to go, yeah. And so like, and that's like in the feel of like, well, how much am I supposed to care about these mercenaries? Oh, we just like tore through them like paper. Not at all. The way of the action felt a little bit more 90s 2000 to me than post.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And I think one of the reasons that it reminded me of phase 1 of Marvel is that it did give off, because even if you go back and revisit those first phase movies, rhythmically, they're much different than what we have now. Like there wasn't an established house style yet, right? Like Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Thor, all feel like distinct movies. And I think that was kind of what was so amazing about the first Avengers, is that you had these seemingly disparate films come together in one film. And then since then, I think there's been more of a standardization of what a Marvel movie looks like, feels like, moves like. And the rhythm of to me, the rhythm of Black Adam felt more like akin to those early Marvel movies than like the kind of like tight, you know, house style of whatever is established now. And you know, I've read some reviews saying that like he's definitely aping the Zack Snyder style, and I didn't get that in the movie. You know, you kind of like, yes, there's a lot of violence, and yes, there's a lot of slow motion, but I didn't feel like any of it was, you know, in the same realm of like the Zack Snyder slow motion and violence. You know, like there's still a cheekiness to the ultra violence in Black Adam that's absent from like the kind of laborious, overwrought violence in a Zack Snyder DC movie.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, the Zack Snyder-iness of it kind of came out more in the like color palette and like the way that the color palette is kind of like pretty monochromatic and orange.
But then rain. Right? There's no rain in Kahndaq, so that well, I guess there was a giant underwater base station.
Yeah, like I mean, like, you know, and there is something to like when you use that color palette, there is something to that color palette and the CGI sticking out more almost, I feel, than a more varied color palette in other films.
But I think the other thing that stood out to me, and we haven't talked about them yet, which to me makes it different from a Zack Snyder approach to DC, is the Justice Society. Like the characterizations and the visualizations of the JSA in this, I felt was very, just because they were wearing vibrant colors, they were having kind of ridiculous superpowers that, you know, a Snyder-esque take would be a little bit less embracing of. You know, like Atom Smasher is a big goof in this movie, which I don't think is typically the Atom Smasher characterization. And we can talk about some of the inconsistencies from comic book to screen of some of the JSA characters. But I thought the JSA was one of my favorite aspects of the movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that when they come in and they like mess up a bunch of shit, and like it's kind of great that they just like they come in and they're kind of wrong, and like it's a different way of getting to the superheroes fight each other moment than we've seen on the big screen. I mean, it's something that we've seen in comics before, but not as often doing it this way in the big screen.
Yeah, and I think like the collateral damage, like again, going back to the Zack Snyder of it all, right?
Right.
Like, there's collateral damage and they get called out for it.
Right.
Like to their face from the people that they're allegedly saving.
Right.
And I thought that was brilliant. But let's talk about two of the JSA in particular, because I think, you know, they're all fine. I think Atom Smasher and Cyclone have some cute moments. I don't know how necessary they are to the overall story, but you need that kind of like levity, and what they bring to it, I think was fine. But of course, the standouts to me, and I think overall for most folks, is Dr. Fate and Hawkman, played by Pierce Brosnan and Aldous Hodge, respectively. What did you think? I mean, you're not the biggest fans of these particular. I mean, you're DC head more so than anything else, but you're not a huge like Carter Hall, Kent Nelson stan, are you?
Well, I mean, the problem with Carter Hall and Hawkman in general was that he has the most convoluted, like he has one of the most convoluted like origins in DC Comics, and that's saying a lot.
which they kind of totally like don't address whatsoever in the movie, which I think to their credit.
They absolutely should not. Like what? No, that you would only spell doom for your audience if you would try to like give an origin story to Hawkman.
But I will say this though, like I read some of this criticism online that I thought actually resonated with me a little bit. I didn't think about it in the moment watching the movie because again, I really appreciated Brosnan and Hodges' takes on the characters and the way they interact in the film, knowing that yes, they're not their exact comic book counterparts, but you know, for what they needed to do in this movie, I think it worked. That said, someone made this point, and I forget who it was. I apologize. Somebody on Twitter, if you are listening, I'm giving you credit, even though I don't know who you are. But he said that he understands why you would put Dr. Fate and Hawkman in a movie with Black Adam, but not why you would do that and not address the potential like connections that those two characters, of all the characters in the DC universe, would have to Teth Adam thousands of years ago. Because both Hawkman, in one of his various identities, right? To your point, he's got a very complex story. Right. But in one of his origin stories is a reincarnated Egyptian character. And of course, you have Dr. Fate, whose helmet is the spirit of Nobu, who's also a very old character and that's got a lot of Egyptology and Middle Eastern, you know, symbology to him.
So, I mean, that's an interesting point, but like if Black Adam is like ancient Sumerian culture and Hawkman and Dr. Fate are kind of related to ancient Egypt, like there isn't necessarily a lot of overlap there. Like that's a post-colonial kind of, or not post-colonial, but like, yes, they are part of the Levant, like, but they're coming out of like a lot of different cultural things, and we don't necessarily know like where in the Middle East Kahndaq would be. Right. It's an interesting question. Like it's Mesopotamian, I guess, but like what country is this displacing in the DC universe to make it fit?
Yeah. Well, if anything, though, like I think the fact that both Carter Hall and Nobu are thousands of years old and would have like previous knowledge of Teth Adam could have been addressed, maybe.
Well, I mean, it is addressed in that they seem to know enough about him. Like what? Maybe they knew more about him than Task Force X knew. Like
which is another weird thing that we'll talk about. But yeah,
they have a throwaway line of like, well, we have ancient texts that you've never seen. So like, well, why does the British guy have ancient Sumerian texts that no one's seen? I know why the British guy has that, because he just took them.
Well, I think the other, like, if you're going to nitpick Dr. Fate, and again, definitely Pierce Brosnan was one of the standouts in the movie, is also the idea that, like, again, comics fans know that when Nelson puts the helmet on, he's not himself. Like, it's not the Iron Man suit. I know there are a couple of scenes where like you actually see the inside of the helmet, but like Nobu possesses Kent Nelson when he puts on the helmet, and he's kind of like doesn't have control of his faculties necessarily. They kind of have a throwaway line. I think Cyclone says like he's not himself when he puts on the helmet, but then in the course of the movie, like Pierce Brosnan is very kind of in control of himself. I know that people like are already making the Doctor Strange comparisons, even though Fate is a much older character than Doctor Strange, but in the language of like live action cinema, you know, Doctor Strange is the template for Dr. Fate in some people's minds. But what did you think? I mean, do you not care at the end of the day?
I mean, we should have room for more than one magic user. I don't like
no, but like the fact that they kind of like just made him different from the comic book version where like Ken Nelson is not Dr. Fate. Ken Nelson is just the vehicle through which Dr. Fate, you know, makes himself known.
Right. And like, you know, he can see the future the same way that Doctor Strange can. And like, he is resigned to kind of doing what must be done. Like, I mean, it's all.
I think what makes Dr. Fate better than Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange is like, yeah, I mean, you have to kill yourself, but you know, that's the only way it's going to work. Whereas Dr. Fate was like, I'll sacrifice myself just to keep you alive, Hawkman.
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing is that, like, yes, they have the same power set, but they don't have the same personalities, right? Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate is an elder statesman, you know, at the end of his life.
Literally.
Yeah, I guess we should say spoilers.
Oh, yeah, sorry, spoilers.
Does that matter? I guess it doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters anymore. And to your point, if anyone who's listening this far into the podcast already knows.
But like the idea that like he he's not the same character as Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is kind of having a midlife crisis in his movies now, right? I mean, Multiverse of Madness is him having a midlife crisis because he survived the biggest event in his life and now he doesn't know what to do with himself.
He's still single. His ex-girlfriend's getting married.
Yeah, he saved the universe and now he feels pathetic. Like, well, I don't know what to do. He feels bad. Dr. Fate is like ready to shuffle off this mortal coil.
Yeah.
And like their characterizations are very different. That like I don't care they have the same power set. Like let them have the same power set, but do something different with the role. And
I think they absolutely do. And I think people who are drawing that particular comparison are just, I mean, again, there's definitely like vitriol for this movie, and I don't quite get why folks feel like they have to have their knives out for this one in particular. Like, it's not the most offensive DC movie. Like, there are other DC movies that have come out in recent years that I understand the vitriol and the critical drubbing for, but I don't know what it is about this one in particular that, like, film Twitter or whatever.
Well, I guess I saw it, but is that just our bias because we like The Rock? Like, I mean, no, honestly, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I haven't gone to a theater to see a movie for The Rock in a long time, but when someone says to me, "Oh, The Rock is playing Black Adam," I was like, "Yeah, of course." No, that's absolutely the fan casting that makes sense, and it worked out great.
I mean, but to your point, like, when critics pan Jungle Cruise, I'm not going, "Well, what's your problem?" Right? Like, I mean, I've never even seen Jungle Cruise. I
don't have any interest in seeing Jungle Cruise.
I
don't know. Maybe I will now that we've talked about it.
Same director. It's the same director. Black Adam director is the Jungle Cruise director.
Oh, I didn't realize. Well, maybe I'll like it then.
You like Emily Blunt?
Now,
I mean,
now I think I might like it. Yeah, and if Invisible Woman's going to be in it.
Wait, what?
I mean, isn't that Emily? It's not Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. That's not what's happening.
So are you reading something I didn't read?
I thought that was what was going to happen.
I mean, that's what everyone wants to happen. And I almost feel like people only want it to happen because they know they're already married. It's like,
yeah. I did see a rumor. I didn't even see the rumor. I just saw on YouTube as a headline, someone made a video that Tom Ellis is in the running for Reed Richards.
Wait, is that the Lucifer guy?
Yeah, it's Lucifer. Lucifer is in the running for Reed Richards. And honestly, you know what? No, he could do it. If that man made Lucifer a workable show for 5 seasons on a premise that should not have worked, no, he can do anything he wants. I'm 100% behind him being Reed Richards if that rumor's true.
Selfishly, I'm still pulling for William Jackson Harper. I know he doesn't want it, and I know that a lot of people have been fan casting him ever since he played Chidi on The Good Place, but particularly that Jonathan Majors is Kang and a descendant. I just feel like he's the perfect Reed Richards.
Kang's backstory doesn't make any damn sense either.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, do any comic book characters' backstories make sense? Aside from maybe Superman or Batman.
Yeah, Vengeance. Vengeance always makes sense as an origin story.
Yeah. And dead parents.
Being the Knight. Yeah.
But everyone else has like just insane origin stories.
Right. Well, and it's also kind of like origin stories don't necessarily have to matter that much. Like, if you can tell a compelling story about just the consequences of having these powers, it doesn't necessarily, like, we didn't get Dr. Fate's origin story. Like, we didn't have a flashback of, he was in Egypt and pulled out this helmet and said, "Oh, I pull up this helmet. The first thing I'm going to do is just put it on." Like,
I think that's a good point for people who are criticizing like the characterizations. Or like, you're not supposed to, like, I love that the JSA is already fully formed when they take on Black Adam, right? Like, we don't need to like stop the movie in its tracks. I mean, there's a bit of like putting the team together montage, but I think that works in context. But there's not like okay, now let's flash back to all, like, is this Carter Hall Thanagarian or is he a, ancient Egyptian?
Right. I mean, right. This is like both. A nitpick. Right. There is a nitpick of like, okay, they call it the JSA, but it's like it's 4 people and 2 of them are like new to this. Like, this seems like it's the first mission for Atom Smasher. And Cyclone,
Cyclone. Maybe she's got a little bit more experience, but
it's 2 rookies, and it's just like you have 4 people on your team. Like, that's a really big mansion with nobody in it. Like, what are you doing, JSA?
You brought this up when we first discussed the movie a couple of days ago with Amanda Waller's kind of like is she running the Justice Society, or do they have like some sort of like working deal that the Justice Society like catches bad guys and puts them in like cold storage at Task Force X? Like, it is weird that Amanda Waller seems to be the Nick Fury of the Justice Society.
Well, it's just not explained. Like, is Task Force? I thought Task Force X was just the legal name of the Suicide Squad, right?
Or the extra legal, because Task Force X is supposed to not really exist.
But you put on when you're filling out, when the CIA is filling out their documents, they're not typing in the Suicide Squad, they're typing in Task Force
exactly
X,
because
right?
Suicide Squad is just what a Deadshot calls them. What are we?
Yeah, it's just what they call it as a team, right?
Yeah.
But like Carter Hall and Kent Nelson very like clearly, we're the Justice Society of America.
Like, they got a cape that they give little kids.
Yeah, and it's in a universe where the Justice League
also
has existed at some point. I don't know if they're still around right now, but they've existed, right? So like,
well, the Justice League, I don't know, is ever fully formed, right? Because even in the Justice League movie, there is no team. Like, Batman and Wonder Woman are trying to assemble a team, but they never formalize. I know there's like, oh, put a table in my Wayne Manor, but like there's never really like
there's never a moment where they said, and we're the Justice,
right? But the Justice Society, seemingly just through context of this movie, have been around for a long time, so long that Henry Winkler was at one point part of the Justice Society,
right? So my best guess is that they're kind of a front-facing, public-facing, government-sanctioned superhero team, I guess. But like, that could have been explained better, but like, you know, whatever, right? That's the thing, that as a comic book reader, it's like, okay, they're the Justice Society, I'll go with it. But if I don't know anything about the comic books and I walked into this movie blind, like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense, and it seems a little contradictory with like everything else that we've heard about it. Like, why is Amanda Waller, who hates all superheroes and everybody with powers, cool with these people having these incredibly powerful artifacts? Like,
right. And also, like, the whole reason that you form the Suicide Squad is to take down Superman if he ever goes rogue. And then you assemble a bunch of people who have no superpowers. That's the whole other thing for that first Suicide Squad movie. Like, you know, Harley Quinn and Captain Boomerang aren't the first people I think of when I think of I need to take down Superman.
When you've got Dr. Fate, apparently. like if call. Dr. Fate was like, like, Superman's supposed to be weak to magic, so
yeah, exactly.
You got a guy.
you don't need the guy with boomerangs when you have Dr. Fate.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on the movie as a whole before we talk about what it means writ large, considering that cameo that was leaked months in advance?
You just want to talk about the cameo. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I don't know, it probably could have been like 10 minutes shorter.
But that's every comic book movie.
Yeah, but that's every comic book movie. But I think if you made it 10 minutes shorter, it probably would have been a little bit more. It would have been a tighter movie. Oh, quick question, spoiler. So the big reveal is that Teth Adam is the father, not the son, that we've been hearing in that origin story. But in the beginning, the first time they show that sequence, it is a different actor, right? It's not Dwayne Johnson with like makeup that you can't see the father's face, right?
In the flashback, when we see the kid kind of like throwing the Rockefeller record symbol,
the Diamond Dallas Page,
that too. Yeah, I was thinking of Jay-Z, but yeah, in a wrestling context, it's DDP.
He's signaling that he's gonna DDP someone. But the beginning, so there's the young kid and he helps that guy gets killed, and then his father is obsequious.
Right.
And saves him, right?
That's Dwayne Johnson.
That in the first sequence, that is.
Well, you don't see his face, but it's definitely.
You don't see his face in the beginning.
No, but it's definitely Rocky's voice.
I almost want to watch the movie again, just to see that opening sequence, just to make sure that you don't see his face, because I think you do, and it's a different actor.
No, you don't see his face. Well, because it's because you don't see his face, but you hear it's clearly Dwayne Johnson's voice. But you don't see his face because they're very careful about cutting away every time he turns around. But then you do see Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam destroy the temple. It's what we learn later that happened much later
after days later.
They named their champion. Right.
Yeah.
Because the champion, right? What's really cool is that, and it happened so fast. I feel like was I seeing things, but when they first show the real story of who the original Black Adam was. and he's granted the powers by the Council of Wizards. He looks like the comic book Black Adam because you see his hairline. I feel.
Oh, like. Sure.
And then that was the true champion that the Wizards called, but I didn't quite understand exactly why the son decided to transfer his powers to his father. But the cool thing about that is that the Black Adam hero champion that the son is actually played by the actor who plays Young Rock on his show.
Oh, cool.
But who plays the wrestler Young Rock, right? Because there's like 4 actors who plays Rock.
Young Rocks. Yeah.
Right. But this is the one that like
in the Rock unit, in the Young Rock multiverse.
The one who actually joins WWE, the young Rocky Maivia, is the one who plays the young Black Adam, which I thought was kind of cool. So
that's cute. I want to watch that show, but like it's on Peacock, and I don't have Peacock.
No, it's a good show. I mean, I've seen a couple. I haven't watched all of them, but I like some of the recreations. I appreciate like. Well,
he had to give his powers. He had to give his powers because that was the only way he could heal his dad in time.
Is that what it was? I didn't quite remember.
The dad was injured, and so like the only way he could save him was he's going to give up his powers to his dad. I think the implication was that he would take them back eventually, but he died immediately.
Right, because they killed him as soon. And then the father waged vengeance against the entire city. Yeah. Actually, let's take a break. On the other side of the break, if you haven't watched Black Adam yet, go see Black Adam. Stay for the post credits. And then on the other side, we'll talk about the post credit sequence and anything else that's on my brother's mind. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard Knock Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies, and you get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDKNOCK at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my like routine of already like I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have like extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praised the benefits of apple cider vinegar, and you know, as someone who's had to like drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or you know, I have some joint pain, and your mom was like, "Drink some apple cider vinegar." It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
Right. It tastes horrible.
Like the apple cider part is like, ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's like, no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you. And the fact that Goalie has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of like gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to goalie.com and use the code HARDKNOCK, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goalie products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These Goalie gummies are great. You get it, and it's a delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the super fruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
Yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to goalie.com, use the code HARDKNOCK, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at goalie.com with the code HARDKNOCK. So yeah, I know you don't give a shit about Henry Cavill.
No, Cavill's lovely. I think Henry Cavill, the person's very cool. I like him a lot. He builds his own computers. He paints his Warhammers. What a fucking nerd. He's great. I think, Man of Steel 2 should absolutely have Clark Kent painting Warhammer statues. Like
100%.
Absolutely. Like Clark Kent should be a nerd. This very nerdy, quiet guy who like doesn't really interact with people. You know what I mean? Like he should be way goofier.
Yeah.
They won't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on who they actually hire to do Man of Steel 2. But now that we know Henry Cavill is back, you know, fully, and then there was the Hollywood Reporter story last week that said Man of Steel 2 is actively in development again. depending on the writer, I feel like if you were to tell Henry Cavill, hey, we're going to make your Clark Kent a little bit goofier, a little bit nerdier than he was in the previous movies, I don't think he'd be like, well, that's not the Superman
but the thing,
he'd be like, oh, okay, I get that.
Yeah, but the problem is that Man of Steel 2 is probably still set in everything else that's happened. So, like, there's no time for that. There's not going to be any time for, like, oh, who's Clark Kent the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this universe does not give a shit about the alter egos as being, like, valid parts of being a whole person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Superman is just Superman all the fucking time. And being a journalist is stupid. Like, journalism does not matter at all in this universe, right? It's a problem in the comic books too.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, that, like, now he's this settled married guy, so, like,
right, with kids and everything. Yeah,
but, like, he's just Superman all the time now, and it's like it's not as relatable. Like, you need Clark Kent to make him relatable.
But I think, like, one of the things that came out of Justice League, as terrible as the movie was, and I get it, even the Snyder cut, like, they do kind of hint more towards, like, Bruce Wayne as a regular person and not this, like, vengeful kind of, like, I'm going to kill Superman, right? Like, there's that whole scene at the end of Justice League where it's like Clark was like, how did you rescue my mom's farm? And he was like, I bought the farm because I'm Bruce Wayne, like that kind of, like, or the whole telling the Flash, my superpowers, I'm rich. Like, that aspect of Bruce Wayne, to your point, in BVS did not exist. He was just
right.
Like, I'm out to murder Superman. That's my whole, motivation for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Similarly, like, enough time has passed since Justice League that it doesn't have to be the whole movie. But to your point, like, if the opening scene is in Clark's apartment and he's, like, building a PC, just for a second, right? And then, like, the phone rings and he looks up and he's like, like, that's all I need, and then he puts on his super suit and flies away. And, like, I just need to know that in his off time, he's sitting in his apartment building a PC and painting his tabletop figures.
Lois Lane already knows that he's Superman, right?
Yeah. She's known since the first movie.
Like, even by the end of Man of Steel, she already
by the middle of Man of Steel.
By the middle of Man of Steel. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Long enough that I basically haven't seen it. I don't remember anything about it.
If Man of Steel 2 goes into production tomorrow, it will be over 10 years by the time it comes out from the first movie. Man of Steel came out in 2013.
It might be time for a new Superman. Like, what I mean? Isn't that what that means? Like, why?
I mean, we've had 3 Batman since.
Yeah. Should anyone be in the same role for more than 10 years? I don't know. Like, I think, especially because DC has the ability to, like, they're a little more willing to have directors kind of do whatever they want, right? Like, yeah, it's probably time for another Superman. Not to say that Henry Cavill can't still do it. I'm sure that he will be great, but it's just kind of like there's got to be somebody else out there, or they should be actively looking for.
Well, that's kind of where they were. That was the whole point of, like, when Walter Hamada put the kibosh on the Henry Cavill cameo, was because he was like, we're moving on from these movies. We have a new Batman. We're going to have a new Superman. And I think, where I stand on it, though, is that, to your point earlier, I like Henry Cavill a lot. And I feel like he has the potential to be a really good Superman. The problem is he's never been given the opportunity to play Superman. And for all the shit that people have for the Joss Whedon version of Superman in Justice League, aside from the shitty CGI face, I actually really liked and appreciated that version of Superman. Like, that showed that Henry Cavill can be the kind of Superman that I want to see on screen, where he's, like, rescuing civilians and, tell stupid dad jokes when he punches you out. Like, that's the kind of Superman I appreciate, maybe because I'm also a goofy dad joke telling kind of guy. But my problem is that, like, he's only been given the opportunity to play, like I said this on previous podcasts, like the Homelander version of Superman. Like, the reason Homelander works as a character is that, like, this is if Superman had no morals. But the thing that Superman has above all other superheroes, and he's the most.
Wait, where is he? Where is he? I mean, Man of Steel, he's a kind of normal until he murders General Zod.
No, but that's the whole idea. Like, the whole idea that the Snyder universe like the only idea of Superman that they have is what if Superman goes rogue? Like
Sure.
everyone is afraid of like the military is afraid of Superman. And even like the last scene where he like destroys the drone and he's like, I can do whatever I want, General, but I'm a kid from Kansas. You can trust me. Like that's not how Superman would act. You know what I mean? And I said this a lot. Like I love, as much as I like Man of Steel as a movie, what I think it fundamentally gets wrong about Superman is that in all that destruction in Metropolis, the thing that bothers me the most is there's a scene where Zod throws a fuel tank at him. And instead of catching the fuel tank and putting it down, he like a badass flies through the fuel tank and lets it explode the building behind him. And he stands there like, ha, you didn't get me. Like that is fundamentally not what Superman would do in that situation. He wouldn't just like sidestep the giant fuel tank that's going to blow up the building behind him full of people. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing is just like, let's show how badass Superman can be and not like how moral and upstanding he can be. And that's the thing that like I feel like Henry Cavill has the ability to play and he never got the chance to play is all I'm saying.
Yeah, you know, those kind of fight scenes, another thing to think about it is that like if when you are going at super speed, everything else is happening very slowly behind you, then for like that scene, he's like in very slow motion watching the tanker like head towards the building and he's like, I'm not gonna do anything right now.
Yeah. Or even in BVS when like the fucking Capitol explodes. And he just stands there like, oh, that sucks. You know? I think in the extended cut of BVS, he's like, he helps like one or two people before he flies off and starts pouting that like, this world doesn't know what to do with me. You know? And then his mom tells him, this world doesn't owe you anything. Like, Martha Kent would never say that to Clark. Or Pa Kent is like, you know, should I have let those people in the bus die, Dad? I don't know, maybe. Like that just fundamentally gets Pa and Ma Kent wrong, but I digress. So yeah, Superman shows up in Black Adam.
Yeah, why were we talking about this? for those who don't know,
In the worst kept secret in movie history, and worst kept secret because Dwayne Johnson was out there saying, "Yeah, pretty much Superman's in this movie."
Well, you know, so I mean, that is an interesting. That is like an aspect of this where like, you know, spoiler and keeping free of spoilers and stuff. It's like that is all baked into the marketing, right? Like, you know, we're talking like with Black Panther and like, oh, who's going to be the new Black Panther? And everyone's acting like it's a big mystery. And like, oh, okay, I will happily eat my shirt if it turns out that it's not Shuri. But like, come on. We all know it's Shuri.
Like Letitia Wright is in the center of every poster. Like,
yeah, it's like what, like you know, it's this weird thing where like it was one thing where like, oh, spoilers to make sure that people who want to enjoy the movie can enjoy the movie on first experience. But now it's like spoilers to kind of like help the marketing team play this game, and I kind of don't get it. Like, is that who are we serving by like playing this charade when everybody knows like, oh, they're actively like marketing. It's like, oh, I don't know who's going to show up, you know, like.
But that's what I mean. But I feel like, but I feel like Black Adam was the complete opposite of that. They were people like on the red carpet of the premiere, like a reporter went up to Dwayne Johnson was like, how did you get Henry Cavill back in the movie? And he's like, well, he didn't even like deny it. You know what I mean? It was just like,
yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, why do like I don't like this is part of the problem with spoiler culture is that like it becomes the only thing that you talk about.
Right.
Is, oh, here's the big reveal of like what happened. And it's like there are other things that happened in that movie that are probably more important. I don't know if it's important or not that Henry Cavill showed up because who knows if they're gonna make that movie.
Yeah.
I'm not confident that they will.
Yeah.
You know, Superman showed up in Shazam, quote unquote, and nothing's come of that. So like, is Superman fighting Shazam and Black Adam, but Shazam and Black Adam aren't going to fight each other? Or, like, by transitive property, if Superman beats one but doesn't beat the other, does that mean that we know that they get, you know, how?
But also, Superman is clearly friends with Shazam because the whole point of that last scene is that Shazam called in a favor to have Superman show up.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like these are nice little gags, but I don't know that they're necessarily a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, the Nick Fury moment was by no means a done deal, right? Like no one knew.
I mean, if Iron Man failed as a film, and that was the only one that ever came out, that would still be like a cool little like Easter egg.
Yeah, it's a cool moment, and like it doesn't necessarily entail anything. No one knew that the Avengers was going.
Well, and I think, but this is like to your point about like it's not just spoiler culture; it's just the way movies are consumed nowadays. Where you have, I mean, we're doing it. Podcast content, video, YouTube content, where it's all about speculation. And what does this mean? And here are all the Easter eggs. Here are the things you missed. Like that is just a different beast now than from when even Iron Man came out, right? Like I kind of blame Lost in a sense where like there was Lost the show and then Lost the experience of like digging into it as if it was like, you know, rich text and then pulling all of the stuff out of it. Like that kind of culture, that kind of fandom is of recent vintage. You know, you don't just appreciate things, you have to like dig into it and stuff. But I will say that like, you know, one of the things about spoilers that you're robbed of when you know something going in is something that I noticed watching Black Adam in a theater full of normies, where I was probably one of the few who like had the ending spoiled for me. Like there was a bunch of people in my theater who were probably not as online as we are, who were genuinely surprised when Henry Cavill stepped out.
I had that in my theater too. But
you know, and that was kind of cool. Like that made me appreciate the moment even more, even though I'd seen it on grainy, you know, cell phone footage a week earlier. It still was moving to hear a bunch of people cheer and gasp when Henry Cavill stepped out.
I guess my thing is that like I knew going in, oh, Superman's probably showing up. I saw the mid-credit sequence. There's no after-credit sequence, right? I saw the mid. I think that's a useful feature for anyone that we should offer that in the beginning of any review of a movie going forward. It's just like, hey, just so you know, here there is a mid-credits thing, there is no after-credits thing. Just let people know.
That's something that's Googleable actually, because I do that.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I use the media stinger. That's what I use.
I don't know. I just Google it like when the credits come on. I Google, should I say for the mid or the end? And sometimes it's.
But for the people who are watching the review, well,
yeah. Exactly.
It's the mid credits. You don't have to stay for the after credits.
Right. Unless you want to watch and all the names of the people who made the movie for you.
Yeah, unless you want to, be thankful for the hundreds of people that worked on this project. I guess if you want to be a nice person, sure. But I saw the scene and like it was a nice scene. I don't know that like it would have been more, especially because a scene like that isn't necessarily setting something up. Like he's not like, you know, and you should come join the Justice League that's coming in 2025. Like he's not like setting something up. It's just a moment.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, I don't feel like I would have enjoyed the scene more if I didn't know going in that he was going to show up. Especially now that we live in a expanded universe film culture for these kinds of movies where that expectation shouldn't be that surprising. I
mean, you know, you mentioned Doctor Strange earlier, and it was like, when Charlize Theron shows up in Doctor Strange, and I'm like, who the fuck is that? And why do I care?
Right.
You know, or like Harry Styles showing up at the end of Eternals. It's like, oh, okay, that's Star Fox. Why should I care? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so I get that. But, you know, the thing that I'd been like anticipating for the last several weeks, for those of you who are following the Hard Knock Life cinematic universe, was would Henry Cavill sport his natural spit curl? And that's the thing that I cared about the most. Like
that's all you wanted.
That's all I wanted. I wanted Henry Cavill. I wanted the DC folks to embrace Henry Cavill's nature, which takes us back to what we were saying. Like, embrace that he's a full-on nerd when you make his new movie. So that's that. Anyway, that's that on Black Adam. Raymond Chow, what is nerd popping in your world?
I've been binging older manga recently, and I just read one called Pluto by Naoki Urasawa. And I think you'd get a kick out of this. It's taking an arc from Astro Boy, the Osamu Tezuka masterpiece, and retelling it as a murder mystery science fiction movie. It's Astro Boy meets Blade Runner, and it's kind of amazing. And I had a really good time reading it.
Cool.
It's great.
So for me, there are two things that came out on Netflix this weekend. One movie that we've been anticipating called School for Good and Evil, based on Soman Chainani's teen young adult fantasy series that came out, starring the aforementioned Charlize Theron, Kerry Washington, Sophia Wiley, Sophia Ann Caruso. I really liked it. Your niece, big fan of the book series, had a lot of nits to pick, but liked it as a movie, but felt like as an adaptation she's got some issues. I thought it was cute. I thought it was really nice. The other cool thing that was released on Netflix this weekend is a 4-part series called Oni Tales of the Thunder God from the creator Daisuke Tsutsumi, who was a former Pixar animator. And it's basically like, it looks like a stop motion feature, but it's actually CGI made to look stop motion. But it's about this little girl living in the forest of other yokai and kami, or Japanese folklore creatures. And she's kind of like the adopted daughter of the thunder god, who's like the red guy with the taiko drum. And so like it's a really cute, really adorable series. So like the English dub features like George Takei and Anna Akana, and that's like the original intent of the show was made by Asian Americans
as an Asian American product.
Yeah, but so we watched it in Japanese because we were like, oh, well, clearly we should watch it in its native language. And then as I was reading more about it, these folks are from Pixar, and so it's really cool. I think I definitely recommend it. I would recommend you watch all 4 at once because it feels.
How long are they?
They're like if you watch them all at once, it's probably like an hour 45 total.
Oh, okay.
So like it feels like just the story. It's 4 episodes, but the story feels like it should be a movie. So I recommend it. Oni Tales of the Thunder God. Raymond, can people find you on the internet? No, I didn't think so. They can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts in the family. Give us a rating and review if you do. Raymond, feel free to sing along if you know these words. Buy merch at tpublic.com. Support us on patreon.com/nerdsofcolor, and watch and subscribe to our videos on youtube.com/the-nerds-of-color. And until next time, if you smell what the NOC is cooking. Would we get in trouble if we start playing The Rock's theme right now?
I mean, they'd have to care to know to take it down.
Oh, I didn't mention this earlier. One thing I really appreciated of the scene where Black Adam first emerges from his tomb and he takes down all of the Intergang ships or whatever, is that it's still an orchestral score. But I remember thinking like, wow, this orchestral score sounds like the Rolling Stones song, The Painted Black. And then like there's like strains of Painted Black in the score. And then it like does the needle drop like seamlessly into the actual song. I really appreciated that because I feel like it would made it feel more intentional than like Suicide Squad, where they're just like dropping needles all over the place.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I did like that a lot of the they do a fair amount of like diegetic music in there too, that like makes more sense than the endless needle drops of like Suicide Squad.
Yeah. So anyway, see y'all next week.
This is the hard knock life, but not the chicken kind, more like the people.